Welcome to the In Search of More podcast. I am your host, Eli Nash. Join me weekly on my quest for more from myself and more from this world. We'll see you on the other side. All right, welcome, Rabbi Pinson.
Thank you, Eli.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
A little bit of a different setting this time.
Yes, beautiful.
Out of the dingy basement in
Out of Brooklyn.
in New York. We still had a good conversation. So, you got nice feedback?
Yeah, Baruch Hashem, thank God.
Yeah, we got nice feedback as well. So, glad to have you back.
Pleasure.
Okay, I wanted to discuss something. It's come up consistently, almost sometimes what felt like a rejection to certain ideas I was sharing. So I thought maybe to flesh it out.
Sure.
Maybe there's a contradiction, or maybe there's not. It's this concept of mayach shalt al halev, this well-known concept in Tanya of the mind ruling the heart.
Mind controlling, the mind controlling the heart.
Yeah. So before we go into, let me share with you kind of one way the contradiction, maybe it's not a contradiction.
Yeah, the way it appears to you.
Yeah. So I used to do a different style podcast where I would share short ideas. And I shared this one idea, sometimes 5 or 15-minute clips, just on ideas that I was communicating to others who were reaching out to me. And I said, hey, maybe people can benefit from that. I record it and put it out. And there was one that I called Trust Your Body. And the idea is that the mind can always be played with. We can manipulate someone's mind, but we can't manipulate someone's body very well. It'll always tell the truth in some way, so trust your body. And I got a response like that to someone and say, how can you say trust your body? It's mayach shalt al halev. So I said, I don't know what mayach shalt al halev means.
Right. What does it mean?
Right. There were other concepts as well that just it definitely seemed to me, separately from that point, that people were using this concept of mayach shalt al halev to suppress emotions.
Right.
So I said, I don't understand what it means. This is what I responded to one person. I don't understand what it means, but you can tell me the Alter Rebbe is saying to deny something or to lie about something. So obviously I don't understand the concept.
Right.
So let's go into what mayach shalt al halev really means.
Okay, so the famous analogy of this story is that there was a student, Talmud of the Alter Rebbe, and during the Napoleon Wars, there was the Napoleon and the Tsar were fighting in the beginning 1800s. The Alter Rebbe said that anyone that knows French should help. Anyone that knows French should help the Tsar
Against Napoleon. And the story is that one of the disciples of the Alter Rebbe in Vilna was sort of a spy in Napoleon's inner circle in Vilna. And whether it's Napoleon or a general, someone suspected that there was a spy amongst them. And the story is that Napoleon rushed to this chassid and put his hand on his heart and said, "Are you the spy?" And he said that the Aleph Beis, like the basic principles of Chassidus, of mayach shalt al halev, the mind controls the heart, saved his life because he was able to, control his heart not to react in a way that would give him away that he was the spy. But to really understand what mayach shalt al halev, what is this idea of your Where's
mind?
that story said? I heard it also as a child.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. What is, I think, like everything, it's really, you have to define definition of terms. The beginning of wisdom is the definition of terms. The wise men of the world have said, which is, what is the heart? What are we talking about? What is an emotion? And where do emotions come from? Period. Like if a person has an emotion, a certain type of story. So let's strip this go a little deeper. There is the core of an emotion, which is like the essence, the core of an emotion. And then there's the narrative of the emotion. So the core of an emotion, let's say a person is feeling love towards something. Okay, so the love in itself is a natural experience. You want to call it a body experience that draws us towards certain people, certain things. The narrative is sort of towards who is that love directed towards. So if I love this person, right, it means I have a natural instincts to expand my heart, to share myself with somebody. Let's say that's love, simple definition. And that's going to be towards that individual person. So there's the core of the emotion, and then there's the expression of the emotion, how it's directed towards.
Okay. Is the expression connected to the narrative?
The expression is the narrative. Exactly.
Is the narrative.
So the expression is that particular thing. Now, where does the expression or the narrative develop? Like, why do I have a developed narrative towards this emotion to this person or to another person?
And that's really fed from a certain mindset. Okay. So I have a certain understanding about myself or the other person. And because I have a certain, and it's not necessarily conscious. I'm not saying I think about it and therefore I created that mindset, but emotion that's aroused towards a particular thing or image or whatever that emotion is comes from a certain mindset that I already have prior. Otherwise, I wouldn't have a narrative. The narrative is created from an idea. And without the idea, my mind, whether it's a conscious or a subliminal or a subconscious, doesn't matter. Something is implanted within my mind that says that my core emotion should be directed in this experience of that particular person.
So which is coming first, the mind or the heart?
So it depends what you're talking. That's exactly a very good question. The Alter Rebbe actually discusses this in Geras HaKodesh. It's a very fine distinction because that's really another question. Like that's the real question. Are emotions produced from the mind? Is emotions like the child of a thought process, or does emotions actually run deeper than thoughts?
And then it creates a thought around it.
And then creates a thought. Like I have a certain attraction, a certain feeling towards a certain thing. Therefore, it creates a certain bias, and therefore I'll think a certain way. And the truth is, there are actually different types of emotions that we have. I think it's not a blanket statement.
It's not an either or.
It's not either. Correct.
Right.
When we talk about emotions, certain type of emotions, let's say an emotion that you have towards your child, right? There is the core feeling you feel attached to your child. There's even the narrative because he's your child or your child. But that precedes an intellectual understanding that this person is your child. Certainly a mother that's carrying a child, right? There's a natural instinctive feeling that a mother feels towards a child. Without a story, you don't need the story. You don't need to tell yourself this is my child in order to feel the love to the child.
Right.
This type of emotion actually is rooted in a deeper place than intelligence. It comes from a place that's beyond the moyach, beyond the mind. This is a different type of emotion. This is an emotion that is
almost hardwired.
Yeah, it's who we are. It's basically, yeah, it's like a hardwire. Who we are as people. Just like we function as a physical body, we have these certain natural inclinations that are transcendent of emotions. Transcendent of the mind, of intellect.
Right.
Okay, that is one set of emotions.
So, for example, a child may respond well to touch. That's not a thought.
That's correct.
Right.
Yeah, right. Certain children respond well to certain types of you say it's child's good. Certain children are tactile. Certain children need to be hugged. Certain people don't need to be hugged. That's their emotional state that they're born with. This is the hardwire. This is their DNA. That has nothing to do with an intellect. Before they have any intelligence, they have that. Then there's emotions that we generally call emotions, which is much more, I would say, like more superficial emotions. Superficial in terms that they're birthed through a mindset, which that's why the Alter Rebbe will call them, that the intelligence are called aveim, or the mother and father. They give birth to these emotions. Those type of emotions are created. It's a created emotion. I'm feeling afraid of you. Why? Because I have a certain story about who you are, or because I know certain things about you, and therefore that causes me to be afraid of you. That's an emotion that was created through intelligence. Understood. Versus another emotion that I'm afraid of fire, right? Or I'm afraid, there's instincts, like there's natural instincts that a child wouldn't jump into fire. They're repulsive from fire or from danger. There's certain type of things that are actually deeper than what we call a regular emotion. So when you speak about moich shalat halev, the mind controls the heart, we're talking about the superficial type of emotion. Or I don't want to say they were superficial, because they're not superficial. It can be really deep emotions. I can be really afraid of this person, or really attracted to this individual person. But it is produced through a certain mindset, through a certain prism, through a certain way of thinking that allows you to have this thought and therefore to have that emotion. Let's say with the spouse, like someone that it's not a natural love, it's a love that you worked on. I think about my wife or my husband, and I think about this person. And the more I think about how wonderful they are and how great they are for me, and et cetera, the more my emotional state towards them will be beneficial. So that is a type of emotion that is created through a mindset, sometimes consciously and sometimes not subconsciously. But every emotion has to have a place where it's emerging from. And that place where it's emerging from is from that mindset. So when you say moich shalat el halev, we're talking about the lower lev, the lower heart, which means the lower level of emotions.
I mean, not the instinctive emotions,
not
but the emotions that are birthed from
correct.
thoughts.
The emotions that are birthed through life experiences. And then we're saying is that means that you can control that
means since it was created from that prism, you have the ability to freely choose what you want to filter into your brain that will allow you to have different types of emotions. If you feel like a certain type of emotion is negative to you and you're having, it's out of control and I'm not, if they're not instincts, but I'm saying if there are other type of emotions and it's detrimental, so you can say, I can think different thoughts and that will allow me to have different types of emotions. And it's not automatic. It doesn't happen overnight, but I can start reading certain things. I can have even subliminally or subconsciously seeing certain imagery, certain things that will eventually affect me in a way that'll have my emotions in a more correct manner.
So bring it back to the example of the chassid who was a spy.
Correct.
Napoleon.
That's a perfect example.
That wasn't instinctive, wanting to save his life?
Well, but it's only because it's Napoleon and he's a spy. There's a story.
Right.
Right? If he says he's just a guy touching my heart, if I put my hand on your heart and I strip away the whole narrative, why would my heart palpitate any stronger? But if I think that you're checking me out to see if I'm a spy, so all he had to do is saying Napoleon is just a guy. This is the quick way of thinking. Napoleon's just a guy, and I'm just standing here. And that's it. My heart doesn't move. But we're so invested in experiences while we're having them that you're feeling the emotions so strongly that you don't have the ability. Most people don't have the ability to say, "Wait a second, that's not what's happening." There's just a physical phenomenon that's happening, that this guy is touching my heart. Without all the overlay of the whole narrative, and just strip away the narrative, and all of a sudden the emotion is nothing and it disappears.
So it definitely seems like the majority of emotions fit into this category as
correct.
Emotions.
Most people, that's why the Alter Rebbe, in the way he phrases it in Tanya, in the beginning part of Tanya, he almost says that this is emotions. Like he doesn't even talk about the other type of emotions. Only much later, like in the Geras HaKodesh, he'll talk about the other emotions. Because generally, most people function from that level of emotions. But of course, we have other type of things that are very deeply, you talk about viscerally true to us. This is like on the level of the body, like the truth of the body. The truth of the body is the truth of things that for our existential reality to be true, we know them to be true, absolutely. And you can't talk yourself out of that. But I think that a lot of times when we talk about visceral truths that we feel in the body, it's not necessarily absolutely that. Sometimes it is some type of narrative that we created for ourselves. But I think children certainly have that, when a person, I don't want to say this, but it's like kind of funny, but when a person's intoxicated or like drunk, if you look at the whole idea of Purim, the idea of Purim is that you're supposed to reach a place of lo yada, beyond knowing.
Mm-hmm.
And Pur is the letters guf and exchanging of letters, which means that Purim is the day of the body. Like, because most
How is Pur guf?
Pei Vav Reish could be Gimel Vav Pei.
Okay,
so it's interchangeable letters. But it's Kabbalistically this idea that Purim is actually a very embodied Yom Tov, like a very bodied holiday. Everything in Purim you do with an exaggeration of your body. So let's say every single day, I don't want to talk about Purim, but let's say we'll talk about Purim for a second. Every single day of the year you eat. So in Purim you have to eat a lot. Every single day you drink. On Purim you have to drink a lot. Every single day you're happy. And Purim you have to be happy a lot. Which means that Purim is an exaggeration of the body. Very much in the body. It has to do with the story of Purim. It has to do with the body. But it's very much about the body. And on Purim you say you have to drink enough that you let go of your mind. Until you don't know. So that if you let go of your mind, then you're just an animal. Like what's supposed to happen? Okay, so I let go of my mind. So but the point is, if I can let go of my mind and I'm really in my body in a very deep way, my body's going to tell me the truth. My body will actually tell me what I have to be doing in this world, right? So it's transcendence of intellect, transcendence of mind to get to that instinct place, which is what the Kabbalists will say. The instinct place of a Jew is to do the right thing and the holy thing. That's right. It talks about Avram Avinu. That Avram was someone that was that learned Torah from his Kliyos, like his inner words told him what to do. The truth means not his intelligence, but it's like his kishka, his inside. Like he knew inside what does it mean to be a person, what does it mean to be a Jew in this world.
Right. It makes a lot of sense. That was the point I was making in that episode. Was that sometimes we can, I'm thinking of one podcast I did with Meir Collinson. So Meir grew up in a Chabad community, and today is a breathwork coach. Right. And in that podcast he was wrestling a lot with whether this is the right thing to do. I'm like, you're helping people. He doesn't seem to be in this place now. This was about 5 or 6 months ago, but he was wrestling a lot with these thoughts that a nice Jewish kid, with long hair running around to yoga studios offering breath work is not what he should be doing. But at the same point in time, he felt a tremendous amount of passion and fulfillment, and he's getting great feedback, and he's seeing people, transform. Some people tell him that they touched God in the experiences, and he was wrestling. So to him, I would say, trust your body, right? Your body is, at the end of this thing, you feel good, you feel fulfilled. I'm not talking, at the end of this thing, you feel good, you feel fulfilled. Go with it. Go with it.
Right.
These are these other thoughts.
Right. I mean,
give me the other side.
There's a whole. Yeah. Well, the other side is. The other side is. I don't want to talk about Meir because I don't want to talk about a particular person.
Right.
The other side is that. To say the other side is basically, there's a fullness to self. Okay, we're not only body, so we are body. And there's a certain truth about our body which resonates, and we do something correctly, we feel it. But we're also our mind, we're also our heart, we have other dimensions to self. And Yiddishkeit wants a person to live honestly, authentically, truly on all levels of their being. So, and the Torah mitzvahs that we have is tools for us to become the most alive person we could be in our body, in our mind, in our hearts.
Right.
Fully. So it's not an either or thing. I don't think it has to be, and there shouldn't be any tension. It should be some type of reconciliation and some type of harmony with everything.
Right. And in this case, what I was encouraging those listening and Meir as well when we sat, and the reason I'm comfortable talking is because we had a public conversation, is to reconcile it to the body.
Correct.
Meaning, if you're feeling the passion, if you're feeling the fulfillment, then go with that. I think what scares people about it is that, so what am I promoting? A life of pleasure, just pleasure seeking? But I've spoken about it a lot. I was addicted to porn for a long time, and that is pleasure seeking. But the body doesn't feel good afterwards.
That's correct.
I mean, if I want to trust the body, then I can trust it there too. And yes, there were periods of it that felt amazing, but after the experience, it wasn't amazing at all.
I'll tell you why. Because you had enough presence of mind to be aware of your body. So there your mind kicked in. In other words, most people, when you say a person is very much connected, it's very earthy, very much connected to their body, and it's going to follow the truth of their body, it sounds very, sublime and things. But the problem is that sometimes like you say, sometimes you do things that are immediately gratifying for the moment, and it feels actually disgusting. You feel actually terrible about it. But if you're not conscious about your life, period, if you're not aware of your life, and you're just trying to live in the existence of being in your body, and that's the end of the your toolkit, then you can end up going in a very bad direction, really ruining yourself.
Right. I would argue that in order for someone to do that, they'd then have to numb the secondary emotion, meaning they'd use the pleasure to numb
that's unfortunately
the emotion that comes afterwards.
Correct. Well, if a person says, "I just want to be in my body. I don't want to feel the emotion. I don't care what the emotion is."
So then they're not right. Then they're not following what I'm suggesting.
Right. But then you're following again that you have to be present of mind, and you have to feel your emotions.
Oh, of course.
So then you have to be the full gamut of the entire being. So back to square one, which is, in order for you to be fully alive, you have to function from all levels of yourself, and then you actually can function correctly. When I have the proper mindset of how I want to live my life, I have a certain ideal, like how I want to live my life. I want to feel my emotions fully, in a very, very in a healthy way. I want to have good connections to people, no attachments. I want to feel healthy love, healthy restrictions. I want to feel all these things, and I want to feel in my body. The Torah says these are the tools that you can do this if you're gonna follow this practice.
Right. I definitely agree with what you're talking about in terms of the alignment.
The holistic alignment of everything.
It's just that the mind could be, if someone wanted to program a young child, you'd program the mind. And then by the time they're older, they think all these crazy things and potentially do all these crazy things.
All right. So, everyone has a bias. Let's say a little bit.
Right.
Everyone has an intellectual bias about the world. Everyone has a certain prism, the way they're seeing the world.
Correct.
As parents, we have to make sure that we give our children, and to ourselves, we make the most holy possible, integrated, wholesome way of living that we understand this, and to give that to our children, give it to ourselves. So we do have a certain prism through which we live our lives through. And we have to try to make sure that it's the correct one as much as we can.
And therefore what? I didn't catch the connection between.
So therefore, because you're saying that a lot of education, like with children telling children, is like there's somehow if you'll tell a child, forget what the manipulation of the mind. Just like be in your body. Just you want to walk around. Just do what you have, which is correct in a certain way. But they also need they need a prism through which they see the world eventually. Like if you take a 2-year-old child, let's say the story of the Chet Tzadas, which is a perfect example of this, the story of the Garden of Eden. Before the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve are living in the tree of life, and they're told not to eat from the tree of knowledge, which means they're living in such an integrated way, but they're like children. They're naive. Is don't eat from the tree of knowledge. That's going to ruin you. Don't become self-aware. Just be. And the story unfolds is that they eat from the tree of knowledge, and the reason that it happens is it's not a sin necessarily. This is the way the Medrash says. It's not a little. This is like part of the development of man. Part of the development of man is that you become self-aware, and once you become self-aware, you have knowledge, and then you eat from the tree of knowledge. Then the question is, what kind of knowledge are you eating from? So the ideal state of being in this very naive state of childhood is perfect for a child, but it doesn't work with a human being as a developed person, because you are going to eat from the tree of knowledge. That's life. You are going to become self-aware, and then the question is: so what type of self-awareness do you have? What type of knowledge do you have? What is the knowledge that you're going to feed yourself? That's going to be the proper prison for you to live.
Right. So what you're saying is that we're already past the point of being able to completely live with.
Correct. Are also 2 years old.
Yeah, and I'm right. I'm not suggesting that we should. I'm suggesting that when
because it's beautiful, by the way. Like when you see your child when he's 1 year old, 2 years old, walking around without clothes and totally not self-aware and totally in his body, it's like the purest thing in the world. Like there's nothing. He has no anything messed him up. There's like this. He's just a being of light. Right. That's it. And then all of a sudden he starts hearing this and hearing that, and they're like, "Oh, what happened? Like your light diminished." So the point of life is not to get that back to the 2-year-old child, even though the word like tikkun comes from the word tinok, right? Yeah. There is like a way to like get back to that wonderment of being a child, which is important, but we have to do it from an adult state. From a place that we're very mindful of our life, and we're very conscious of our life. In those states, could we drop out of mindful, be less mind, get out of our mind sometimes? And the answer is we should. That's what Purim, the idea of Purim is. And we have to know when to let go, what is the appropriate time to let go. If you're listening to music and you're in your mind, you're not listening to music. But if you want to really listen, stop being in your mind. Sometimes you have to enter into states that you allow yourself to drop your mind and get out of your head.
Do you see how the idea or the words could be used for someone to suppress emotions? The idea of
yes, of course, yes. There's no question. The Alter Rebbe never wants to suppress emotions. This is not part of the system. Certainly not. It's not. It's about directing emotions in the correct way. Even the external emotions that a person has, Alter Rebbe says you should have emotions. You should be alive. You should feel.
When you say external emotions, you mean?
Like the more the superficial emotions which are produced through the mind. Those type of emotions, Alter Rebbe wants a person to have healthy emotions, healthy attachments, healthy connections.
Right, fulfill it, recognize it, feel it. We spoke about that a lot in our first discussion.
Of course, 100%.
To completely and fully feel the emotions. Yeah, there's a sikha that I learned last year, I think it was like Parshas Tzav, which made a strong impact on me about my understanding of it always, because I read in the Hebrew, then the English translation.
You have your prism.
Sure, 100%. My prison, but his words.
Yeah, okay.
And it was about that on the Mizbeach, there should always be a fire. It should not be put out. And my understanding of that was Rabbi was saying that we should live with passion. And like even in a state of puzzle, there should always be a tumah. There should always be passion.
You should always be passionate.
And I feel like many of us have been taught to be afraid of our passions.
Yeah. I think because emotions start becoming very real when children are going through, their adolescent period, and they have a lot of testosterone, a lot of other things that they it's directed in the wrong places, and people that are much older have a disconnect with that. And I think it's really about taking those same passions that you have, maybe the natural passions that a person has, and directing them into higher places, into deeper places.
So you're saying it's in the teenage years that suppression often...
Yeah, and then eventually it develops over time. But I think it happens during them because people don't know what to do. You have a teenager that's raging with a lot of emotions. What do you do with that?
Right, typically a child, we can accept their emotions.
Yeah, child, we all do. But then when they start getting like, well, calm down. Like, what? No, I don't want to calm down. It's not about calming down. It's like directing it. Take all that fervor, all that passion, and like direct it into a positive place.
Right.
And then it'll be good. And then like eventually you'll have a healthy person.
Right. There's always a story that said, maybe to switch a little political, about during the 60s and 70s, the Rebbe referring to the upheaval, the social upheaval going on in positive lights. Is there something to learn from that to the present day events where there's a lot of young people who are jumping on board, potentially with anti-Israel ideas or...
I think that there's a huge thing to learn. I think there's a tremendous, unfortunately, historically, antisemitism creates a stronger Jewish identity for Jews that felt, it does two things. For Jews that felt a little bit not passionate about being Jews, either, God forbid, they can fall further as being, okay, so I have nothing to do with this, or it actually awakens something that's stronger for them.
Right, meaning some could make the decision to be less Jewish.
Less Jewish, because like, okay, I don't need this. But generally, anti-Semitism, John Paul Sartre, there's a famous book about this, Anti-Semite and the Jew, that this idea of that sometimes the anti-Semite actually creates the Jew. Like the more anti-Semitism there is, the more.
For sure.
Yeah,
we're seeing it now.
Yeah, you see this now. So now you have to utilize this. We have to recognize that this is a very strong opportunity to direct Jews to become more Jewish in a healthy way, not because of anti-Semitism, not because of the negative. Like there's Judaism as a response to negative. Like I'm just not the anti-Semite, and then there's Judaism as what do I stand for? So I am a Jew. Forget about the anti-Semite. And what does the Jew stand for in this world? And why should I be Jewish? And why should I make my children Jewish? And why should I raise my children Jewish? It's a high time for Jews to let go of the negative narrative or the Holocaust or anti-Semitism and start thinking like, so if you really want to raise Jews, what is the Jew's contribution to this world? And why should I continue this legacy of being a Jew? If I believe that I can have free choice in doing it.
Right. I guess the first wave of that is the recognition that we are Jewish to the anti-Semite no matter what, even if we avoid it.
Right.
I think I saw a story of Sheldon Adelson. He said, I think as a teenager in high school, he was bullied by someone for being Jewish, and he realized that he couldn't escape it, so he may as well embrace it.
Okay, right.
So that idea. But you're pushing a little further, and you're saying,
I think that.
What does it actually mean?
Yeah, what does it mean? What does it mean to be a Jew in this world? And why should I be Jew? What does a Jew stand for? And there's a reason for us being. There's a reason for Klal Yisrael in this world. Hashem, there's a purpose, and we have to stand up for that purpose. That we're supposed to be. We're supposed to be Or Lagoim. We're supposed to be the light unto the nations, to speak truth, to choose justice. I mean, this week's parsha, right? It speaks about Avram was chosen. And why was Avram chosen? Because he was chosen because he will teach Staka Mishpat, righteousness and justice, and moral and hope and future and possibility and divine image. These are the gifts of the Jews that we brought into this world. We're given to this world. We're gifted through Matan Torah into this world, and these are the truths that we have to uphold in this very confusing world.
When we use the term "chosen," is it who chose? God chose Jews, or Jews chose God?
Both.
Both.
Yeah. The story of Avram is that stories of Avram is told. Lech lecha ma'aretzecha, like leave your father's land. But the very strange part of this story is that Avram, the Torah doesn't actually describe why he was chosen. It says, Vayam Hashem Avram. Hashem says to Avram, Lech lecha. Who's Avram? Why this guy?
Oh, it's the first introduction of him.
Yeah, we know that he was born and his father-in-law is taking him, but we don't.
Right, but it had a whole lineage of many people.
Right, but there's no backstory. The backstory of Moshe, let's say, for example, in contrast, Moshe is the great Redeemer of Israel, but the Torah actually describes he's a man that stands up for a person that's being hurt, right? So we know that he has compassion.
Right.
Then he has not only compassion for his own brothers, but has compassion when he goes and he meets the shepherds bothering the daughters of Yisrael. So he sees that he has compassion even for a stranger. Okay, so there's a story there. He's a strong person. He stands up for the right, for the oppressed. He's going to be the redeemer. Makes sense. Hashem appears to him and says, you're going to be a redeemer. Why is Avram chosen? What's the story?
Right.
So the Sfas Emes and other tzaddikim write that the phrase Lech Lecha, which is very deep, the phrase Lech Lecha, you shall go, which is true with all statements, is a statement that Hashem tells every individual person and has been telling every individual person since the beginning of creation. Lech Lecha means go to yourself. Go by yourself. Go make something from yourself. Leave your father's land. Leave your father's place of your birth. Leave the place that you were raised. Become something. Who are you? Am I my father's son or my mother's son? Or am I a person on my own? And Lech Lecha is like the hero's journey. It's the journey to become self, to self-discovery, to find yourself. And that voice has been said throughout all of history. Lech Lecha. Hashem has always been saying it to all people since the beginning of time. Avram was the first person to actually hear it.
Oh my God.
Hashem tell Avram Lech Lecha. Hashem didn't say Avram Lech Lecha. Eli Lech Lecha. Hashem is saying to every person. Avram was the person that said, that's the voice? The voice is that says that I have to move, I have to grow, I have to become something. And that's why the Torah doesn't give a narrative, a backstory, because there is no backstory. The backstory is you and me sitting here right now and saying there's a voice, a divine voice that says, Lech Lecha, go to the land that I will show you. There's even no destination. The destination will be something that will appear throughout our life. It will become. It's a process of becoming.
There are a lot of parents who may not like that you're telling that to their kids.
Yeah, but they did it to their parents.
Right, supposed to. Right.
I mean, that's okay. Yazav as obviously, a person has to leave their parents and become something, right? Elo told Yitzchak ben Avram. Then Avram Hoyled Yitzchak. This pasuk says, "This is the son of Yitzchak, the son of Avram." Right. That's Avram gave birth to Yitzchak. So the beginning of your life, they say, "Who are you?" You say, "Oh, this is my father." Elo told us Yitzchak is the son of Avram. Who are you? You're identified by your father or your parents. But then it eventually becomes Avram Hoyled Yitzchak. Avram gives birth to Yitzchak, which means they ask your parents, who are you? And say, oh, my son is Eli. You got it? That's the way it should be. It has to switch at some point. It has to go from the direction is that you're a child of somebody to your parents say, I'm actually the father of somebody or the mother of somebody.
Oh, very interesting.
So you actually become something. And the journey is a lifelong journey. This is the story of the hero journey. The journey is it's a very ambiguous statement. Hashem says, go from your land. The land that I will show you. It doesn't say where it is. Because the moment I know where the destination is, I stop my journey. But if I tell you your life, you're 37, 38 years old, there's a land that I will show you. It's always becoming. It's always tomorrow. It's lit olam haba, towards the world to come. The world to come is the future tense. We're a being that's in constant state of becoming. What that becoming will become, we'll see tomorrow.
Right. The moment you think you found your way, you're lost.
Correct.
So keep going.
Keep going.
So I've shared this idea previously. I don't know where I heard it or it just kind of resonated with me. This idea that everyone has to go through this journey of smashing the idols of their father. Meaning Avram, yes, actually had an idolatrous father, but every child's has to smash the idols of their father, because if all they do is follow in their father's way, then they're serving someone else's god.
Correct.
That is,
there was a famous Hasidic Rebbe that he was a son of another previous Rebbe, and he did it differently. Like his father did it one way, and he did it a different way. And the Chassidim, the older Chassidim, came to him and said, like, that's not the way you do it. Your father did it differently. He said, I do exactly what my father did. He says, but you're not. He says, just like my father was original, I'm original. That's what we say every day in the davening. We say, Elikei Avram, Elikei Yitzchak, Elikei Yaakov. We say the God of Avram, God of Yitzchak, God of Yaakov. We don't say Elikei Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov.
Right.
Because Elikei Avram is God of Avram, that's God of Avram. And then Yitzchak came along and says, Elikei Yitzchak, that's God of Yitzchak. Then Elikei Yaakov. Every person has Zeh Keli Vanveu. Zeh Keli Vanveu means this is the God, Vanivuhu, and me and him. Which is, who's my God? And by the way, your God from yesterday is not the same God you have today, right? Hopefully, you're growing, you're becoming, and the image that you had of what God was yesterday is shallow and idle in an idol worshiping in comparison to your alive awareness of God of today.
Oh, I got you. So it's not really the God of our father; it's the God of our yesterday.
The God of
also.
our yesterday.
Yeah. Yeah, we have to.
You constantly have to grow. You have to do tshuva on the tshuva that you did yesterday. Right? Because if you did yesterday, but it's yesterday.
Right. That's the problem with calling someone from.
Yeah, because that means that they're like
they're there. It's a destination.
Right.
Because
no, that's yeah, I don't know why that means that, but that's what people associate. People associate that a person that is from, that when, this the colloquial saying is that when you're not religious, you live with questions. And then when you're religious, you have all the answers and there's no more questions. But that's not lech lecha.
Right.
That means that's stale, and it's not a l'kim chaim. It's not a living God. You're not in a living relationship with life, with God, with presence.
Right. Yeah. To a degree, it has to be infinite. Otherwise, it's not.
That's the definition, right? It has to be infinite.
Right. The growth.
The movement towards the Ein Sof is Ein Sof. The movement towards infinity is infinite. It's always becoming.
I guess that's why we have to have a Yom Kippur every year. That no matter what we do, we missed it.
Exactly.
Somehow.
Yeah.
The second we started thinking.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Very.
We constantly have to move forward.
Very, very, very interesting.
And the engine that moves us forward is our emotions, by the way.
Say more.
The engine of life is emotions, not intellect. What really drives a person is their emotions. It's the cheshek. This is the desire.
The desire, right.
Desire is a very strong thing. Tzaddik writes that the difference between an angel and a human being is desire. Cheshek. Cheshek is like everything. You don't have cheshek, you don't have anything. You don't have movement. It's the drive.
Is this a contradiction to what the Buddhists will call non-attachment? This.
Yeah, superficially, yes. And the way it's lived actually is also yes. But the way it should be is not. There's a difference between connection and attachment. And they're different words. They're different meanings. Or sometimes the way I wrote about it is like between holy attachment and unholy attachment.
Okay.
That the point of life is not to not be emotional, not to be engaged in your emotions, and not to be engaged in life. But it's not to get an unholy attachment with something. The unholy attachment means when I think I can't live without it, and I need it. The holy attachment is I want it. If you go over to your spouse, we don't talk about relationships, but if you go over to your spouse or any person and say, I need you, the immediate reaction of a person is like, please stay away. I can't. I don't need to need me. You tell someone, I want you. That's a healthy attack. That's a healthy connection, because you're saying, I'm choosing to live my life with you. I don't need to live with you, but I want to live with you. That's a different way of thinking about how we have emotions to things. I want to be connected to this. I don't need to be connected to this. And proof is that if something doesn't allow me to be connected with it, I'll just let go. I can move on. It's fine. It's not going to destroy me. But when I have a strong want.
But all things being equal, I would prefer that.
Yeah. And even want it. I have a strong desire for it. I have a cheshek for it.
Right.
But if it doesn't, but if I don't get it, okay, that was not meant to be. It's okay, I can move on. So
this also, and what you're saying also, like that cheshek, that's consistent with the message of trust your body.
Yeah,
right? At some point.
Yeah. Or even just really, that the cheshek is the core emotions that we have, is core feelings that we feel when we feel something and we feel alive being in that place.
Yeah, a lot of my journey has been thinking that I'll feel a certain way when I get to a certain place, and then actually feeling that way, but the feeling lasting a very short time.
Right.
And then something else emerges afterwards.
Correct. Because the counterintuitive way of thinking about it is that the energy lies in the cheshek itself. The energy lies within the desire itself, not in the fulfillment of the desire.
So maintaining the desire.
Correct.
Maintaining the hunger.
Correct.
Yeah, there's
it never works, because then you always feel depleted. It never works.
If you get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's this he's a former CEO of Logitech. His name is Bracken Darrell. He at a TED Talk where he spoke about always staying hungry. I mean, he had very extreme examples of this, like wearing the same 2 jeans for a long time, always flying economy, no matter how far he's going.
It's true, by the way.
Always staying hungry.
Yeah, and also spiritually, for like spiritual growth, always to be in that state of emotional cheshek, like strong desire for things, because it's you have to live in that place.
Right, saying the fulfillment of desire
always
depletes in some way.
Yeah, always
in some way.
Yeah, that's the nature of it.
Right, to a degree. There's also
right to the degree. I'm saying, but
right,
you don't have that same passion, that same desire. So you have to live with like an unfulfillment of that constantly. So you're always like excited.
I don't know how well you know sports, but I grew up, in the 90s going for the New York Mets and the New York Knicks, and it was a very tough childhood.
Yeah, that's hard.
Most traumatic part of my my childhood was being a Mets fan.
Darryl Strawberry.
But yes, and then eventually met the Yankees in the World Series and lost very, very tough parts of my childhood. We're going into over here, and eventually I moved to Miami. And within a few years, they had their super team form. LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh.
So you changed teams.
I said, I'm ready here. I'm going to go for the...
that's not fair.
What? I'm going to go for the Heat. And I started going to games. I was enjoying it. And then the second season together, they won. And I think that's...
That's it. It's over.
That was the whole thing.
That's the whole thing.
It was kind of boring.
Exactly.
Yeah. Then the next year, they won again.
I didn't care.
It wasn't even... Yeah, it didn't matter. Right. But for the idea of winning kept me going for 20 years.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Every year you're hoping this is going to be the year. It never is, but this is the way it is.
Right. Like Donald Trump says, you're going to get tired of winning.
Yeah.
Very, very interesting. Earlier you were saying something about, I forget the example you used, but being able to, in the concept of separating emotions and being able to see something from a distance. Maybe the example of the chassid with Napoleon.
Yeah.
Can any of that? I've been struggling a little bit with what's going on in Israel, but in the reverse sense. Not that I'm getting sucked into it, and that I'm watching so many people get sucked into it, and I'm wondering if there's something wrong with me that I'm not. I'm reading it, I'm seeing what's going on,
but you're not getting sucked into it.
My average day is the same as it was before, and I see a lot of people feel very, very guilty that if they do anything other than be completely consumed by it. So, is there anything from does that concept that the Alter Rebbe was talking about give us anything to learn from as it relates to our response to what's going on in Israel? Of course, not the practical parts of the response. Right. I'm not talking about the practical parts.
You have a certain way of feeling about this issue, and obviously it's not disturbing you in the same way as other friends. I don't think that's a judgment in any way. That's just some people are affected different ways. But I do think that in the root of that idea, in general, when a person feels about certain things, let's say you heard about, God forbid, there was an earthquake in Zimbabwe and, 1 million people were killed, you're going to have a different type of reaction to that versus something that happened to a cousin of yours. God forbid. So I think there is a type of, like we spoke before, there's a certain type of prism that we have. Certain people have a certain way of thinking about the world, a way of thinking about Israel, of thinking about the Jews that is a certain way, and therefore it evokes a certain type of emotion. And certain people have a different type of view of those things, and therefore it evokes a different type of emotion. And there's no wrong or right. And also, it's not a question, do you need to induce a certain type of emotion? If you're a person that you're a compassionate person, you do feel for your brothers and sisters, and that's not the question, but you're not hardwired in that way that you feel the same, distracted by events of other people. That's just the way you're hardwired, and that's okay. I don't think there's something to be fixed. I just think it's just certain people function in different ways. If you were completely callous to this issue and it didn't care, then you have to ask yourself, like, why is everyone caring? I don't care at all. Maybe there's something I'm thinking about this very, very different way than most people. But if you do, but you're assimilating your emotions and integrating your emotions in a different way and calibrating your emotions in a different way than other people, I think that's the way you hardwire. Maybe that's the way you deal with all, trauma and all things. Maybe people react to different things in different ways. I don't think there's a one way to do it. Every person has a different way of doing it.
Understood. Okay, and then the other side of that, in terms of Mayel Shat Alev being something for someone who is consumed and can't do anything but watch the videos and read the news.
Right.
That
there's a good example where you could use Moyachal Shalot Lev, which is you have to ask yourself a question. You're saying, I'm being consumed by this. It's affecting my health. It's affecting the way I live in this world, affecting my relationships, affecting my children. Is it helpful? Is it beneficial? Now, if it is, then okay, that's the question.
Right. Meaning someone may use that energy to be on the front lines and
right. If
be more alert.
More alert and more doing things for Israel, doing more mitzvahs, whatever they're doing in this world, they're doing it more because they feel like that's a pressure that's putting on them. Then okay, fine. That's okay. Just like there are people, there's soldiers, Jewish soldiers sitting in Gaza. They're 24 hours on alert, and you want to feel connected in that way, and it's causing you to act a certain way. Then that's a very nice thing. But if it's just causing you to walk around depressed and dispirited about the world, I think then
I met a guy this week who said he's not able to work for several weeks.
And what is he doing? He's just not working.
He's reading news, watching stories.
So then Hamas wins, and I'll tell you why. Because besides what terrorism is, but that's the nature of terror. The nature of terror is to do a small act. Obviously, it wasn't really small, but a relatively small act to have a bigger effect. It's not warfare. It's a terrorist. A terrorist act is you do a small little act and it creates terror by people, which means it makes you not function correctly. Whether one person or 1,000 people, if you do a terrorist act to one person, and it creates a certain type of fear, a certain type of anxiety, that you'll have an effect on many more people. So a person that subscribes to that is actually allowing terror to work. Number two.
Right, meaning by the numbers, we have more to worry about from car accidents.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the nature of terror. Terror is psychological warfare. But I think there's also like a deeper thing is that this is an attack on a Jew. It's not anti-Israel. It's actually a Jew. It's like really pure antisemitism, and like I was saying before, what does a Jew stand for? The antithesis of what a Jew stands for is what they stand for, what these terrorists stand for. It's the diminishing of the anushias, the humanness of human beings. There's two ways how to look at a human being. One way to look at a human being is that every person is born in a tzelem Elokim, a divine image, which means every person has a positive, holy spark of God on whatever level they have, but they have something that's divine within them, which is positive, which divine alakus means, divinity means something that's life-affirming, that's progressive, that's moving forward, that's hopeful, that's redemptive. That's the definition of what a tzelem Elokim means. And that's what Jews believe in. This is what we live for. We live for the world of the possibility. And even if we're down, we always believe there's hope.
So that's why we say Am Kaddish, because you're using the same...
it's the same idea, exactly.
The same idea of Kedusha.
Kedusha means that we believe in the possibility, and we represent in the world the people that always rise to the top, no matter what happens to us. So we represent hope.
When you say rise to the top, I think that can be misunderstood. Rise to the top of a situation.
Of every situation, yeah. If we're oppressed, and then eventually, God forbid, are thrown out of a country, we build another country, and we come there successful on any level.
Right. There's always an energy.
There's
that's
always
moving
a
forward.
Rejuvenation. There's always
right.
We believe in Tchias HaMesim, not only in the future tense, that the resurrection in the future tense, but we believe in Tchias HaMesim life. Life is constantly Tchias HaMesim. There's constantly resurrection. That's why we say Animamim. We believe fully in Tchias HaMesim. We are a people that constantly are resurrected from the dead.
Right. We even see many positive ways to view, as we were talking earlier in this conversation, many positive ways of viewing the attack itself.
Correct.
Right? It created
So
a togetherness.
Correct. So we're always looking for the positive, and we're always resurrecting, and we're always believing in hope. That's what we are as a people, and that's what we give to the world. We give to the world this ideal. The terrorist, Hamas particularly, which is a cult of which is a death cult essentially, believes in the opposite, not in the goodness of man, but in the lowliness of man. We'll take man and we're going to reduce him to the most lowest, barbaric possible state, and that's what they're going to act out on. And what they're going to create, the seeds of that idea, what it creates is hopelessness and non-possibility and non-future. It's the power of destruction. There's
right. You could spend years building, and within a moment, everything gets destroyed.
There are two powers in the universe that are always in contrast with each other. Okay, in a very macro level, there's Yisrael and Amalek. There's Israel and Amalek. Yisrael represents hope, future, possibility, divine image, the possibility of man, the goodness of man, the high possibility of man. And then there's Amalek, which is Arashis also. It's also beginning, but Achrisi Ade Ovid. The Amalek says death, destruction, absolutely no hope, hopelessness.
Right. Also, we say Amalek as doubt, right?
Doubt, correct. That destroys everything.
Right. Discouragement.
Discouragement. That's the opposite of all hope. And these two forces in the universe, they're meta forces in the universe. There are people that always subscribe to one form of life and one subscribe to the other form. This is like the Kedusha and the Klippa. These are the two meta forces in the universe. And the objective is to eradicate Amalek completely, to dispel the spirited and hopelessness and death, and eventually eradicate death completely. That's what the vision is, right? So we have to do battle against those things. So if a person says, I feel hopeless, and I'm sitting in my pajamas and reading the news the whole day, Amalek just won.
Understood. And the fact that in the process of eradicating Amalek, if it's viewed as a person or a group, Amalek, it can create hopelessness for someone else.
Amalek according to the Rambam, Amalek represents an idea that people subscribe to. If you subscribe to a cult of death and destruction, that if someone says, I cannot exist if you do, not we cannot exist in the same territory, or we can, like, you move here, I'll move here, we'll be okay. Or if you give me this money, I'll give you that, we're gonna be okay. But if I say I cannot exist if you exist in the world, that's the construct of Amalek.
There's no room for both of us.
There's no room for both of us. Whoever says that subscribes to the concept of Amalek, which is like, Nazism or any form of like real pure evil in this world. And whoever subscribes to that has to be completely eradicated, that particular person, because there's no hope for that person. That person subscribed to a reality of hopelessness.
We had a family here with some young kids last week, Shabbos, and girl maybe 4 or 5 years old. She lit Shabbos candles, and she said, not that religious, in fact, but she said a prayer that all the bad people become good. And I thought that was neat. Like her words.
You see, bad people should become good. This is a famous Jewish belief.
Which means?
Which means Yitamu Chatoim, the sins should be banished, but not Chotim, not the sinners. Right. We pray for the sins to be banished, to be absolved and to disappear. That's correct. Now, if someone gives up the Amalek paradigm, that's another conversation. But if someone is holding the banner of Amalek and says, I need to kill you for me to be,
right,
this person has to be.
So it's kind of what Israel's saying, surrender or die.
Yeah, Israel doesn't want to attack civilians.
I'm saying even Hamas itself, they're saying surrender or die.
If you're going to surrender the banner and say, I'm no longer subscribing to, the son of Hamas, I don't know if you know this, character. If you surrender this ideology, then of course you should live. What do you mean? You're human. Then you're a human being. But if you choose to not be part of the human civilization, not a human race, if you choose to not live with the Tzelem Elokim, and you choose to say that I need to kill you in order to survive, then it has to be eradicated.
Yeah, what's interesting is they're not saying we have to kill an idea. They're saying we have to kill a people.
That's exactly what it is. They're not. It's not about territory. It's not about occupation. It has nothing to do with anything.
It's not about someone's political opinion.
No, it's nothing. It's about it's a baby that's just born and has no political party is an affront to my existence, and I have to kill this child. This is what the Nazis. Everyone thinks about like the Nazis were against the Jews, which is true, but no one understands. People do understand. The Nazi was not going to end with the Jew. It never ends with the Jew. Right.
Even them, they didn't. They killed tons of gypsies and gay people.
And then they will kill all the blacks, and they will kill all the French. Eventually, they'll kill the entire race besides themselves. That is really the ideology of Amalek. Amalek says, if you subscribe to me, if you're part of this death cult, you exist. Anyone else, I'll destroy. And that is an evil that has to be destroyed from this world. There's no appeasement to this type of evil. To the upholding of this type of evil, there's no appeasement.
Oh, understood. So how does one determine if someone is Amalek? I understand.
I got it. That's complicated.
Because I agree. Big shoulders.
It's big shoulders. I agree.
To make
but if someone has a charter and says in the charter, I need to kill you, then basically, and you're carrying the banner of that charter. if you read the Nazis,
Right.
I see. This is what they're saying. It's not hidden. If they're saying
Right.
this is part of the charter, and this is the conference is saying we have to extinguish every single Jew.
Right.
Which is not going to end with the Jew, by the way. It'll never end with the Jew.
No,
the
and
Jew
it
is the
didn't.
lowest
And it didn't over there. They killed animals. They killed Thai workers. They killed everyone.
Of course, and they killed people that were mentally retarded. Then they killed gays. Whatever they killed everyone.
No, I'm saying Hamas when they came in, there were 30 or 40 Thai workers which were killed.
Yeah, no, of course.
Maybe 30 or 40 were kidnapped. Actually,
I don't know. It doesn't matter. But the idea.
But they were clearly not Jewish. They knew they weren't. It was life.
It's life. Just your existence is, or else you convert to my way of being. Or else you subscribe to this death cult, and that's Amalek. Now you're right. Let's talk about it in a classic definition. The classic definition, when Klal Yisrael had to go to battle Amalek, there need to be a court ruling. There had to be a bezdin. You had to go to the courts, and the court had to evaluate the situation and define it and say this is actually what has to be done, and this is actually Amalek. So it was not okay, this guy's Amalek. Let's go kill off this whole nation. Correct.
So how is that done now, practically?
But now we're not killing them all. Now you're killing actually terrorists. So that's a whole nother conversation.
Right.
You're not.
Yeah, it's really until the guy pulls an RPG out.
Right. I know.
He's not.
Right. You're not saying he's a terrorist until he actually, unfortunately,
Right.
He's about to kill you.
And the fact that when you say a majority of people, whether they did knowingly or not, let's say they did, voted for, meaning the majority of people, Rubai Kukulet, right? The majority of people have ascribed in some way to this ideology.
That's a good question. What does that mean? Is it under duress? Is it under pressure? Is it real?
Right.
That's a very fine question.
Right. Or do they do it for other reasons?
Correct. I don't know. So that's why Israel's going through all the loops. If Israel if Israel act like any other Far East, Middle Eastern country, there would have been 1 million people dead already. Because if this happened,
not even Far East, no, they act like the U.S.
Yeah, especially this is the U.S. Correct. Right. When America was attacked in 9/11 and they destroyed Iraq.
They weren't dropping leaflets.
And had nothing to do with it. Iraq had nothing to do with 9/11, but they did, probably 1 million people died. It's okay, that's I'm not saying yes or no. I'm just saying that's the way the world functions. And but Israel's trying to do everything in their possible because they actually do have morals.
You're saying it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, they're doing it in the right, correct, just way of doing it. They're trying to get the civilians out of there as much as they can. And if Hamas chooses to have civilians as their own shields, that's the death is on Hamas.
Right, of course.
The blood lies with Hamas, of course.
Right. So you're saying this fight is nothing new.
This fight is nothing new. In terms of Israel, it's the first. This is the first Muhammad Amalek. This is the first battle of Amalek in terms of Israel history. Because other battles are territorial.
Egypt.
Egypt wanted to sign it and didn't want to sign it. It may be destruction of the country, the elimination of the country of Israel. It wasn't destruction of Jews. It wasn't to go out to kill Jews. The attacks of throughout history in the state of Israel, whether it's the Yom Kippur War or this, it was to topple the government of this country, but not to kill Jews. That was not the statement of the enemy. This is the first time that we have an enemy that says, we want to kill you, Jews.
Right. I guess some people say that Hamas has changed their charter since they don't have the same thing, but their actions.
If you kill children, there's no redemption to that.
Right. What just flashed through my head and then.
All right. Look up
past. With Amalek, when we said killing every single one, that included kids, right?
Yes.
So what did it mean by that?
That's another question.
And the answer?
But that's also that's biblical.
Right.
Which means that's through prophecy. I would just say like this. This is, first of all, everyone that subscribes to it, but I want to say something different. We don't have the mindset of people that lived a few thousand, 3,000 years ago. We have such a different way of looking at the world. There was a certain way of being in the world, especially being in that part of the world. If you just read any history of any nations of that time of the world, this is general warfare. This is the way things were done. That if someone attacked you, you destroy them completely. And it was done again with a bezdin. It was done intentionally. But we're not equipped to really understand that in our modern way of thinking. To us, it seems very,
barbaric.
It seems that way, yeah.
But, well, the trouble I have with it is then Hamas can say the same thing, that their base then has determined,
that the
That this is-
existence of a Jew is a threat to them.
Yeah, I've killed every single one. The dogs, the workers, the babies.
Yeah, but we don't say that. Let phrase it a little differently. Amalek, obviously, this is a big thing. The Sefer Ikim. A lot of the Rishonim speak about this Amalek because it's obviously something that has to be understood, and I don't think it's the right time. It's because it's a really complicated issue. But I would just say like this: there is Judaism the way it's expressed in the text, and Judaism how it's lived. And the only way to define what a person really believes in is not what it says in the text. It's how it's practiced. So if you say, I think this guy, not a Muslim, let's say some Hindu guy, believes this because I saw in the Bhagavad Gita, I saw that's what it says. Not true. You have to ask the person. You have to go to a living person and see how it's practiced.
What decisions are you making based on this text?
Yes, because there's a Torah Shabbat Peh. In other words, there's always a living tradition that overlays on the Torah Shabbat Ksav. So it's written in the text a certain way.
And by Torah, you mean it also Torah lahavdil.
Lahavdil, correct.
Right.
Lahavdil, right? There's a text, and then there's a living text, how it's actually practiced. So if you say, Amalek, Jews believe that we have to go exterminate the entire population with men, women, and children. Not true. We don't do that.
Right.
Right. We haven't done that in thousands of years. So obviously the Torah Shabbat Peh of that is a little different than Torah Shabbat Ksav. Even the Rambam's idea, where the Rambam says that Amalek is not a people, but it's an idea, is a big chiddush, is a tremendous novelty. But this is the way the rabbis always thought about it. They thought about it differently than when you're actually seeing it in the text. There's a certain living tradition that Torah Shabbat Peh that gives it. So therefore, you can't say this is what Jews believe. It's not true.
I understand.
You understand? That's the first thing. So now we're talking about Amalek and transposing it into modern areas. We'll say that Amalek represents anyone that has this vision that wants to kill another. We have to kill that person, not his wife, his child, etc. But himself we have to kill. Then you're saying that it's possible for them to have a living tradition. They do. Unfortunately, that's a living tradition of annihilation. There's a living tradition of death to any infidel. And that is a problem to humanity.
Right, and it has expanded well beyond Hamas.
Yeah, if it's ISIS or any other radical of some fundamentalist Islamic groups, these are people that actually believe in sort of like world domination, and anyone that's an infidel, whether they're Christian, Buddhist, or Jew, has to be killed or completely converted. So this is a cancer to civilization. It's not a cancer to the Jew. This is a problem. This is a problem for the human race to survive. Amalek has to be destroyed.
Is there a metaphysical reason for why the Jew seems to be the lightning rod to attach this to
absolutely
attract this idea?
The metaphysical reason is because the Jew represents Hashem's presence in this world. The Jew is the Jew is the witness to Hashem's presence. The witness that there is God in this world.
Right.
That there is something that's transcendent in this world. There's something that's supernatural. It doesn't make sense to exist and yet exist is the Jew.
Right, that suggests that God exists.
Correct.
I've also thought
the Jew suggests that God exists.
Right, the fact that a Jew is saying, the Jewish people are saying, we are chosen, is not to the exclusion of everyone else, because everyone else is also born and chosen and everything else. So maybe the Jews are chosen to remind everyone else that they are chosen too, in the sense that God has a purpose for everyone and everything.
To show that every person has its Tselem Elokim, every person that, the Jew is the person that is the nation. This is not originally the plan, right? The original plan was it should have been all humanity, right? The story of Adam and Chava in the story of the Garden of Eden is not a story of a Jew. It's a story of humanity.
Mm-hmm.
And
right, God is not Jewish.
Right, God is not Jewish. Right? God created man. Man and Eve, Adam and Eve are not Jewish. And then the narrative was this went on for many generations, and one person did this and the other person, and things were not getting. And Hashem said, okay, you know what? I'm going to choose this family. And they're going to represent my ideas in this world, which eventually will transform the entire world.
And we're going to make a covenant.
Yes.
I'll keep you around.
I'm going to keep you around for all eternity because you're going to be the people that are going to be these people that are going to be these ambassadors that are going to teach this world about the Garden of Eden, about redemption, about Mashiach, about the future, about resurrection, about hope, about every person's born in the divine image, about progress, about linear time, about everything. Right. About the way you think about the world is... And all the positive things that we think about the world is
right. So maybe the covenant is I'll keep you around, but you're also going to be the first line of defense when something goes wrong.
No, God forbid. Not the Chas v'shalom. I don't want to say that. No, not the first line. I think it's the other power of the universe that rises. So the other power of the universe always sees the Jew
as the enemy of the idea.
Of the enemy of the idea.
Right.
I mean, if you go to Hitler, the Nazis. I don't want to get into like theology, the philosophy of the Nazis, but a lot of it is based on Nietzsche, which is
that there's a herd mentality and a herd mentality. There's like a herd mentality and there's a master mentality. The herd mentality are the Jew. The Jew is a herd mentality. Why is he called the Jew herd mentality? Because he's compassionate and he's giving and he's loving and he's always kind, and that's a Jew. And the German was like, that's terrible. That's weakness of man. You should be strong and powerful. And that, I'm not saying that Nietzsche was a Nazi, but that ideas is, there's two contrasting ways of thinking about what a human being is to be. What does it mean to be a human being in this world? Is human being the most powerful? That's what it means. The most dominant? Is that what it is? Or we use dominance and power to be kind, to be giving, to be loving, to further creation,
To be empowering.
to be creative, or to use force and brute force. And the Jew represents this light in the world. It says power is by kindness, power is by tzedakah, by righteousness, by mishpat, by judgment. And anyone that thinks contrary is, okay, so the Jew is the enemy.
And the fact that they go after all Jews and not those Jews who choose to represent that idea specifically.
Because it's the Jew in itself. It's just the concept of a Jew.
It's the existence.
The existence of a Jew, because every single Jew in this world today has to know this. Every single, even most secular Jews today, had a grandparent that was Moiser Nefesh to be a Yid.
Right.
Because they wouldn't be around if they didn't.
Right.
Every single Jew in this world had one grandfather, one grandmother that either ran away from Spain or ran away from Portugal and said, I'm going to leave all my money and all my possessions behind because I want to live as a Jew. So every single Jew today is eternal, represents the eternal people.
Right. Fascinating. Yeah, it's a fascinating time to explore these.
Yes, it's a very big time. I think the world, I'm very hopeful, by the way.
You're Jew.
Exactly. Thank God. And yeah, right. But I'm also hopeful because I think there's a few reasons why I'm hopeful. Number one, the world always constantly, the way, just in general, very, very broad statements, the way civilization actually evolves to higher states of consciousness is through setback. The system moves, then there's a drop in the system. People get really bad. They realize how terrible they were. They reboot and they reboot on a higher level. And that's the way the system works. There's always there's a thesis, it's movement, then there's antithesis, and then there's a synthesis that goes in a higher place. That's the way history is projected.
So are we moving upwards?
Yes, so the arc of history is always moving forward.
Upwards.
Always. Now, it doesn't mean there's no dips.
This concept of Yeridus Hadaris?
That's something else. If you want to get into it, I'll talk about it.
Yeah.
That's a different thing. So the arc of history is always moving forward. We're getting to the Messianic time, so we're getting better, which means two things. You can go to the doctor, you can get immediately, penicillin. I mean, the world is healed. People are living longer, people are living healthier, so the movement, the arc of history is projecting upwards.
Right, less people in poverty.
Less in poverty, exactly, less people hungry, exactly. So we're moving towards the direction of a Messianic time. Mashiach, that's what we believe, right? Redemption, future. But sometimes there needs to be a reset because there has to be, there's linear, very incremental movements, and sometimes there needs to be leaps and bound movements. So in order for it to be a leap and bound movement, something really like a quantum leap in movement in the development of history, there has to be a catastrophic event that forces people to recalibrate onto a higher level. So if you look at history, throughout all time, war does that. War, I'm not giving a justification for war, but war generally, what war does, especially big wars, it refines the human to appreciate something more and to go deeper. There's always a higher light that emerges out of war. If you actually look in this parsha, this is actually the Torah speaks about this week's parsha about the 4 kings and the 5 kings, and that's where the whole emergence of Torah Shabbat and Mashiach all comes from these wars. There's an emergence of sometimes through a war. There's a sifting out and a refining, a certain type of awareness that brings people to a higher state.
So this is a little different than say this cycle. Have you heard hard times make strong men? Strong men make good times.
It's a little different. Yeah, it makes bad times.
Makes weak men make bad times.
But
so it just feels like a continuous.
That's like one of these, these graphs that go up and down. I'm talking about the movement is this way, it dips very low, and then pushes much higher, and it goes into a higher direction.
And now we're higher than we ever were.
Correct.
So so you're saying we're not coming. It's not history repeating itself exactly.
No, it's never history repeating. The arc is always moving higher, and
right.
and events, major events in history cause a certain type of refinement, allows for a higher level of living. Okay.
Are we? I'm young, right? I'm 38 today.
Yeah.
Is this with COVID a few years ago, and this was going on in Israel one time? Is this?
It's all related.
No, I'm saying, is this a very unique period? Is this much more?
So I want to explain. I want to explain now. So I'll explain exactly what I was going to say. So throughout history, through all of time, things. This is the way history worked. There's unfortunately, a lot of bloodshed. A lot of people die. A lot of people, terrible things happen in war, and then eventually there's some type of movement higher. We're living through a time like 21st century, this era, that again, I'm hopeful that we are experiencing right now. You said COVID, it's COVID, and it's a lot of things that are happening, even culturally in America and all over the world. The right and left. There's a lot of upheaval and chaos that's going on in the world.
Yeah, COVID wasn't about COVID. It wasn't about the virus as much as the reaction to it.
There's a lot of chaos going on in the world. This chaos that we're experiencing in the last 2-3 years now, especially now in Israel, which is a global event. It's not a particular event. Is our World War II. This is the war. There's no war coming. This is the war. This is actually the event that shakes people into the higher place. Where 50 or 70 years ago, we actually had to go through, a horrific event with 6 million Jews were killed and 50 million people in the universe were killed, which is a horrifying event. And that moved the world forward. This is what the hope is, that we're going through the exact same event. This is our own personal Holocaust. This is our personal, the world is going through its own personal.
But we're able to transform with less.
Transform without as much bloodshed.
That's what I'm saying.
Correct.
Yes.
So therefore, that's the hope. Right? The hope is that this is actually the event that's going to push people to start thinking in different ways. And with less bloodshed, with less violence in the streets. And that I think is actually happening now, partially because of deterrence and partially because of nuclear, but other reasons as well. And that's number one. Number two, I think movement is moving much quicker than it used to. It used to be that time actually went much slower years ago. Things are rapidly developing much quicker certainly on a technological level, but this is actually
the speed of information,
speed of everything.
Technology,
everything's about speed. Things are moving very, very quickly. So therefore, history is moving very quick. So it took 100 years, 200 years. Things are moving very quick. If you take from the beginning, if you take 1920 to 2020, the world is radically different than it was. This is pre, theory of relativity, pre-Einstein, pre-quantum mechanics. Mm-hmm. The world has completely radically changed in the last 100 years. So things are moving very, very rapid. So since we're moving rapid, I think we're ready to finish that stage. I think we're actually, amen, exactly. And now the world is waking up. A lot of people are becoming conscious, becoming aware and saying, this can't work. The world the world will disappear. Humanity will disappear if we continue doing it the same path that we were doing for the last few years. This is the chaos. The chaos will bring some type of synthesis or some type of higher understanding, which will allow civilization in the world to move forward. And the Jew is playing this for whatever reason, because I think it's Messianic times. The Jew is playing this integral. It played an integral in World War II, obviously, sure. But it's even playing even a more important role because now it's actually in a state,
right?
Israel. So it's if you have a little eye, if you just observe the world, you see that this is happening. There's a divine plan.
Right. It's certainly fascinating. I mean, as a Jew, I'm interested in it, right? I'm going to Times of Israel, I'm going to Israel National News, I'm seeing what's going on. But when you go on CNN, when you go on,
like why?
Apple News, in the scheme of things, there are many more people dying in Africa.
I know, in Syria, there were 500,000 people killed in the civil war. No one ever heard about it. You ever heard anyone in Syria? The Syrians killed besides Assad killed
I think there's stuff going on, literally right now.
Yeah, of course.
I think Pakistan is sending back a bunch of Afghans back to Afghanistan to be under Taliban rule. I think that's going on right now.
It's probably crazy. A lot of crazy stuff going on.
We don't have.
And there's 15 million Jews in the world. That's less than Albanian people. When was the last time could name me 2 Albanian people in the world? Right. Who knows Albanian people? It's not even a statistic. The Jew,
right?
Because there's a divine plan. There's forces in the universe, there's positive and negative forces in the universe. They're coming to a major clash. It's going to bring a great light. That's why I think there's going to be major light that's going to emerge soon in the world.
What would that look like?
I don't know. If I knew, then I would be there.
Right. No, but how we know it's light? What would it?
Yeah, you'll feel it. The whole world will feel it. Everyone's gonna. The whole temperature of the world will be different. Maybe I hope maybe Mashiach actually literally, but certainly there'll be a messianic time period. There'll be like some type of geula consciousness, some type of redemptive consciousness that will come, and the world will actually become in a much more stable place.
Right. One thing that has been meaningful to me just watching is the way Jews have come together over this. Not everyone.
Absolutely.
You have some fringe. You have a few left on the left.
Right.
Who are
but yeah,
being vocal.
It's fascinating, and AI is going to play a big part of this too as well.
In terms of,
I don't know yet, 100%.
What do you mean by it? In terms of the consciousness, or in terms of the war?
No, in terms of consciousness. That the emergence of some type of people are very nervous about AI. People are very apprehensive. Yeah,
it's coming anyway, so there's no sense.
No,
being nervous about
it's absolutely coming. I'll tell you a fascinating, like, I don't know if it's so interesting, but to me it was very interesting. There was a conference of like the top people in AI, like the top, and it was they invited me to come to this conference,
Cool.
and of course I was the only from Jew there, but it turns out like I would say 40% of the crowd was Jewish. Because I don't know if you know, but the AI is very like saturated with Jews, especially Russian Jews. It's like a lot of Jews. And the first time they were sitting together, it was like the top people in AI. I don't want to say names, but like the top people in AI all sitting around. And it's like 40 people in a room. And the beginning of and I'm sitting there. I just wanted to hear. I want to know the sugi. I want to know what's going on. And the person that opens up the conversation says, "Imagine a rabbi has to give a parsha shir." This is literally what he said, a parsha shir on Shabbos. And I'm looking around the room and like, parsha shir? Shabbos? Like, who are you talking to? He's obviously talking to me, right? And he says, if a rabbi is going to parsha shir, what would he do? Like, before AI, you have to open up you have to learn. Now he can just AI can spit out a Dvar Torah. And I'm thinking to myself, what is going on here? Like, what's happening? I'm like an alternative universe. And after he speaks, and then this professor speaks, and this guy has a company, and all these like trillionaires, the kids, and like everyone's talking about AI. And they at the end they all said, "We want you to talk. Like, please tell us something." And they all wanted to know, how do we make sure that AI doesn't supplement the human being, the human race? How do we make sure that it actually enhances the human experience? And how do we make sure that AI will be something that will be advantageous to the human, that will enhance the human experience as opposed to.
And they were looking to you for that.
And they were looking at me as a representative of Torah. Yeah.
And what did you say?
Oh, a lot. But
can you give us a snippet?
First of all, like you said, it's an inevitability. This is you can't pull back the clock. It's like that's.
It's a wave coming.
It's a wave that's coming, and it's going to happen. I think we have to understand what it means to be a human being, because a lot of the technology, in general, makes human beings into like robotic, responders to certain type of stimulus, and that's terrible. I think humans, like literally what we spoke about before a lot. Humans are people that feel that emotions are a very, very strong part of the human component. A moral compass of how we have to live our life is a very important part. And if we can create types of AI that will allow for human interaction in a way that allows the functionalities of that humans have to do will able to be done by AI, but all the emotional stuff will be left to humans. I don't like psychology or therapy. Like, think the need for the human being will be understood, that cannot be supplemented. You can create tremendous AI to figure out mathematical things, and maybe even like there won't be any more accountants in the world. There probably won't, and maybe even some type of lawyers will lose their job. It's probably happening. But if you can retain the human aspect of it, like all the humanities of businesses should be.
Right, even a lot of doctors can lose their job, but not the way a doctor makes someone feel.
Correct. Like you could, maybe a surgeon, like how you do surgery can be done by AI. But a person has cancer, God forbid, and comes to a doctor, needs a human being to tell them you're going to be okay, or this is going to be the treatment. So try to create AIs that will enhance all the types of experiences that are not indigenous to what it means to be a human being. And then it could be healthy.
Right. That's certainly something interesting. I never thought of it that way, is that AI clarifies what it means to be human.
Correct. But the unfortunate thing is that if you don't do it correctly, it will try to mimic human behavior, which means you're going to have therapists that are AI, which is they're going to be so programmed with trillion different answers of possibility answers. If you tell me, oh, I'm having a problem with this, they can spit out, this theory and that theory, the other theory. That's incorrect. It should never happen. Human interaction should always happen, because that's what it means to be human, is to feel to the nuances of human and touch and things like that.
Very interesting. So you see, just to tie it together, is the trend, the next move.
The next movement, is going to be connected to AI. There's
in the way it transforms the world.
Correct. There's visions of Mashiach, right? I don't know if this is what it is, but there's certainly certain types of that we believe that every person will be resurrected, that there'll be a resurrection, there'll be Tchis HaMesim. If you told it to a person that lived 100 years ago, they'll think, okay, that's supernatural, of course. You tell it to a person today, and you say, wait a second, but if you can upload a person's DNA to like some type of AI, and that person can have all the experience that a person had 100 years ago, now what's the difference? Like, it allows us to imagine prophecies being fulfilled in a way that are actually technologically possible. I don't know if that's what it means, but
Right.
it's possible. It's
Certainly the idea of food for everyone.
correct.
Yeah.
Distribution of food
Seems
for everyone.
possible.
Health for everyone. People living eternally. I spoke to one of these characters. They started Skyping. One of these. He's a brilliant guy. He's from Tallinn. His name is Jan Tallinn. He's like one of these big investors. He says he wants people to live forever. That's like his idea. And I'm thinking to myself, that's what the prophet said. The Nevi'im said that people were going to be able to live forever. And now you have a person that's a scientist that's like investing hundreds of millions of dollars. Like, how do we make people live forever? It's fascinating to see that the prophecies of old, which was like this utopian possibility, is actually materializing in our life in some way. I don't know if it's exactly what the prophets means, but it's maybe some type of shiluf, some type of connection between both these ideas.
Right. You're saying likely it can happen in a very practical way.
Yeah, and I'm not 100% sure what the Nevi'im meant if they didn't mean that. Like, what's a Navi? A Navi sees in the future, right? That's a Navi, someone that sees. But it's like the divine. The Navi is saying, I see the divine image of humanity in the future, and this is the way it's going to look like. There's going to be no death and no wars and no hunger. And then you see, like, wait a second, it can actually be done. So this is the Ruach HaNavui. This is like the prophetic movement going back to Klal Yisrael, which is being drawn into the world. That's showing the world another possible way of being.
Understood. I like the hope. I want to scroll up a little to the conversation, even though I feel like I'm going to be switching the energy a little bit, but it's still a question. So for the most part, like I mentioned, Jews have become very together from this whole Israel tragedy. But then you have the few out there, and one of those is Neturei Karta, right? The representation seem to be very religious. I imagine they're basing their ideas on Jewish texts. So what is it? What is this idea? I've been asked the question a number of times. I have no idea. How does one explain what these people are, what they're saying?
Listen, some of them obviously are not well, but the strangest thing, I actually once spoke to someone from Neturei Karta, very high up in Neturei Karta, and I'm like, what are you doing? Like, what this doesn't make any sense. He had a very weird but interesting interpretation to this thing. He said that this is, in his mind, he's trying to eliminate antisemitism. And this is his theory. I'm not saying he's right, but this is this theory. His theory is that in the modern world, antisemitism and anti-Israel are equated with each other. What he's going to say is anti-Israel and anti-Semitism are two separate things. Don't equate the Jew with the Zionist. So I'm going to show you proof of that, is I'm going to stand with you against the Zionists, what he doesn't believe, the Zionist regime, whatever he says, and I'm going to demonstrate that I'm a Jew, but don't kill me because I'm a Jew. If you want to kill me because I'm a Zionist, that's another conversation, but I'm not. So if you meet a Jew in the street, you have to ask him, are you a Jew or you're a Zionist? If he says he's a Zionist, then in your mind, okay, maybe you can kill him if you're Hamas. But if he says he's a Jew, don't have to kill him. I think it's a faulty argument, because I don't think they make a distinction between anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism. But I think in their mind, they're actually defending Jews, which is a bizarre thing to think about, but it's at least it's a thought. It's actually not just something that's
right. I prefer explanations.
That's the explanation,
right? That don't make someone look like
He's not just a crazy person. There is an explanation. It's crazy. Maybe you don't agree with it, but there is actually some type of rationale.
But there are some ideas, like for example, the fact that the Rebbe was very pro-Israel. That wasn't necessarily consistent with all Orthodox Jewry.
No, the Rebbe was pro. It's not pro the Medinas Yisrael. There's two separate things. There's Medinas Yisrael, which is the state of Israel, and then there's Jews living in the country called Israel. Jews living in the country called Israel, which is Eretz Yisrael, has nothing to do with what happened in 1948. Right?
Okay.
Jews, the natural homeland of a Jew is Eretz Yisrael. That's a sacred land that belongs to Jews, and Jews ruled over it and lived there in the beginning of their people. We lived there for thousands of years, and Jews have always lived there for throughout all of history. And the dream was always to come back to Eretz Yisrael in a messianic time and build Eretz Yisrael. That's one story.
Right.
There's another story, which is a more modern story, which is a state of Israel, which is a secular state that was built in 1948. A lot of the tzaddikim, not only the Rebbe, a lot of big Rebbes were against the state of Israel.
Meaning?
They believed, I mean, it goes back even before the state of Israel was established. They believe that the whole Zionist project is a mistake. First of all, in the old country, let's say in Russia or in Ukraine, when the Zionist movement began, the Zionists were very anti-religious. They believe that they can create a new type of Judaism that's the Torah mitzvahs is for the old Jew, and for the new Jew, you'll have Eretz Yisrael, like the land. You work the land. You'll have an army. You have have agriculture. That will be the new Jew. So it was really an argument whether Yiddishkeit should take on another form. Like is Yiddishkeit the Torah mitzvahs that we know from Sinai, from Matan Torah? Is that the Torah that should be practicing, or maybe that was good for a few thousand years? But now, if you want to go into the new world and want to create, and the Zionists were a lot of
so it's not all the ideas of Zionism.
It's the idea. It's the fundamental idea of Zionism,
right? That a Jew
secular
can
state
right.
was most tzaddikim were against. By the way, most Rebbes were against that. Most Gedolei Yisrael were against that.
They were against this idea that
they're against the whole idea.
Judaism should be expressed through nationhood versus through adherence to Torah mitzvahs.
Not nation. Nation is also complicated because you could have nationhood within Torah mitzvahs,
statehood.
Of course. Secular statehood. Is secular statehood a positive thing for Yiddishkeit or not? Most of them believe that it wasn't. Now, post facto, there is a state. The state already exists. What do you do now? And how do you support that? And if you look at it, it's very careful because the Rebbe never called Israel Medinas Yisrael.
Called Eretz Yisrael.
It's very different, right? Medinas Yisrael means a state that was established because of a UN resolution in 1948. Eretz Yisrael is God-given. Eretz Yisrael, Hashem gave us the Eretz Yisrael to Klal Yisrael. It doesn't have to do with the state. And therefore, in Eretz Yisrael, the people always have to protect themselves and to be strong that they shouldn't give away what they have already. Once you have it, post facto, you shouldn't give it away. But I just want to say something interesting. The Rebbe's opinion about Eretz Yisrael is the same opinion why the Rebbe said people shouldn't leave Crown Heights.
Shouldn't leave Crown Heights.
Same idea. Or leave South Africa. After, when Nelson Mandela became president, a lot of Jews left South Africa. They thought it's dangerous. We should leave South Africa. And the Rebbe said, no, you shouldn't leave South Africa. They'll be fine after the apartheid. Because, and the same thing goes with Crown Heights. The Rebbe's vision is a messianic Geula vision. Okay, that's what Rebbe lived his life. That's what we wanted to impart. That's his major teaching, which is the Gullus mentality. Exile mentality is a Jew has a bag. That's why Jews have jewelry always. You pack your bags and your jewelry and you leave. You don't own land. And if the anti-Semite comes, you pick yourself in the middle of the night. The program comes, you leave. The Jew is always on the run. Things get hard, you run. That's the exile mentality. The redemptive mentality, the Geula mentality is there's nowhere to run. Wherever you are, you're exactly in the right place. And we never run from anyone. You don't run. You're always in the exact right location, right place. This is a very different mind. This is a mind shift.
Didn't he run?
No, you run when when someone comes with a gun and is about to shoot you. Right. That's foolish not to run because after you die. I'm talking about from fear. Do you run from fear? It's not real. If it's Germany in the 1930s or 1939, it's a very big difference. If you run from Germany in the 1920s, then you just fear. Hitler could have been killed. Things could have changed, but you ran because you were afraid. That's negative. If you run because there's a gun in front of you, that's okay, right? Yeah. That's a very different. So the Rebbe's opinion about the world and about a Jew, the way a Jew has to think about himself in the world, is a Jew should never feel like they're misplaced. You should never feel like you're not in the right place. You're not in the right time. You're always in the right time, right place. By the way, everyone should feel this way.
Maybe there's something else. There's also something to do about it.
Yeah. Oh, that's for sure.
Right.
Sure.
There definitely feels to me like certain people are going into somewhat of a passive response, which is something like, "Oh, Mashiach must be coming," which it seems to kind of go up against and contradict a lot of what I thought I heard from the Rebbe, or, secondhand from the Rebbe about Mashiach, which is it's something we're doing that's making it happen, not that there's this
right. You have to participate.
Big bang.
Yeah, even
Right.
what Mashiach now is like, I want it. I want to create it. I want to be that reality. Exactly. Because if I know let's say this home, right? You bought this home. You're here. This is your place.
Yes.
Your neighbor says, I don't like this guy, Eli, living on my block. What are you going to tell him?
You spoke to him?
Yeah, exactly. I don't like it. What are you going to tell him? You're going to say, I don't know. I'm here.
Okay, right.
You want to leave, but I'm okay. This guy's going to start, pestering you, like say, putting flyers. You're going to call the cops. Like, you're not going to leave because you want a beer. Right. This is the mentality. I need to be, and why you really, like, if in the depth of what this is saying is that Hashem put you here. And Hashem says, I want you to live in this house because this is the house that you found. And I want you to build a family in this place. That's a Geula mentality. I belong here and I have to be here. And if you have a problem with me, I'm going to deal with you. But I know that I have to be here. Not the first time there's any type of rumblings, I'm out of here. Because I feel displaced.
Right. You want to get me out, bring an army.
Yeah.
Right. Got it.
And that's the Rebbe's mentality with Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Yisrael is, Hashem gave it to you. Medina Yisrael, not Medina Yisrael. The bottom line is we have it. You own this land.
Right.
Why would you give it away? You belong there. Where's the Goin Yaakov? Where's the pride over here? And also even with South African jury, and the Rebbe saved South African jury. It's clear, and 99% of the rabbis in South Africa they are Chabad, because what the Rebbe said is like, you're in South Africa. Hashem put you there. Hashem wants you to be in South Africa, to build Yiddishkeit in South Africa. Why are you running? It's gonna be okay. And if it's not like you say, it's not gonna. So make it be okay. Help be part of the solution.
Be part of the solution.
Yeah. And that's what happens. South Africa today is a thriving Jewish community, and it's a safe community.
Beautiful. Okay, can we tie the conversation together somehow? We started with, what is it called? Ma'ashat Alev.
Yeah.
We went to Israel, AI, world politics a little bit, Messianic.
Yeah.
How do we title?
It's all one.
Meaning?
Everything's always one. You have to figure out the pieces of the puzzle, but it's always one. Like the human being. The human being has many different facets of himself, of herself. And there's the mind part of self, and the emotion part of self, and the body part of self, and the soul part of self. And the kunst, the trick of life, is to live in harmony with all of them. Not to be intellectual to a fault that you don't have emotions. Not to be so emotional you get so close attached to your emotions that you can't function, you can't get out of bed. Not to be so in touch with your body that you're not even present, to have presence of mind. How do you integrate all these systems in a correct manner? That's like part of the moyach shalat lev, the control, to be a master of your life. To be a master of your life is to choose how you're going to live in this world. How are you going to approach this world? How are you going to show up into this world in a way that's going to be healthy and holy and noble and moral, etc. So that's the way to show up. And a person lives this way with presence. They actually know. Sometimes when I'm feeling an emotion, I want to feel it. Yeah, I want to feel it really, really, really feel it very, very deeply, because that's the emotion I want to feel. Even though my mind's saying, well, you shouldn't get too attached to your emotion, but that's what I want now. I'm choosing, like I said, it's not a need, it's a want. I'm choosing now to feel my emotions very clearly. When I'm sitting with my child and my child is stroking me, I don't want to say, oh, but the truth is he's really doing because he wants candy. That's fine, true. But I just want to feel the emotion. I want to be very, very present. I don't want to feel that. And I feel sometimes too pulled into emotion in a way, like you say, I can't function. I'm not functioning correctly. And because of world politics, or things are going on and I'm not feeling correctly, you have a little moyach, say, have a little presence of mind, saying that's not helpful. That's not helpful. That's actually, it's detrimental. So the more you can have mastery of your life and the different components of your existence, and the more harmonious your existence is, the more you can actually function in this world in a correct way and feel everything correctly, understand everything correctly, think about everything correctly, and also have transcendence correctly.
Right. So first we're starting with the world is.
Yep.
Like what is.
What is.
What is. Except from there, whether it's Israel or AI.
Correct. The world
or
is
the emotions.
And now I am being, I want to say not only the world is, me being projected into the world that is part of the world that is.
Sure.
It's not two separate things. There's no object and subject. The world is part of me. This is all my screen of reality. Right? I'm just observing the screen in my picture. And then I have to choose, how am I relating to all the pieces of the picture that I'm seeing? Because it's all part of my narrative, part of my story, part of my screen, and my story. Therefore, I always have to ask the question, what could I do about it? And is there anything for me to do about it? And once I can't do about it, how do I let go in a correct way?
Right. It's a very empowering, hopeful Jewish mentality and approach.
Yes, God, yes.
Thank you very much. Appreciate
My pleasure,
it.
Ali.
We'll do it again.
Yes, it's a shot.